This is KLMeri.
And this is Soda.
We're going to talk about the first season of Star Trek Lower Decks. Now, for those of you who have been listening to our podcast, you'll know that we reviewed the first two episodes of Lower Decks a couple of podcasts ago. So, in that podcast, we talked about characters that were introduced. We talked about some of the interesting references that popped up in the episodes, and we talked about just recapping the episodes in general. But today, Soda and I are going to focus on season one as a whole. One, because we know that season two of Lower Decks is slated to drop in August of this year. We already know that season three has been greenlit, so there's going to be at least another season of Lower Decks out there. And we thought this would be a good opportunity to just kind of give you guys a recap of what went on in the first season, talk about characters again, some character arcs, and just some of the general things that we noticed as themes in Lower Decks season one.
Yeah, and what I'm curious. When we talked about it, I think the show itself was still on the air. Like episodes were still coming out, but now that you've seen all of it, how do you feel about it?
That's a good question, Soda. I actually did a rewatch before we came to this podcast because I wanted to remember some of the things that I had forgotten. I think I had watched all of the first season. I had finished it by the time we did that other podcast. So I forgot things in the meantime. I kind of forgot some of maybe the storyboards of the episodes. I think I caught more details on the second watch than I did on the first one. It's an odd thing to say, but I might have enjoyed it more the second time around than I did the first time. And I will tell you one of the main reasons why. I stopped thinking of Boimler as the main character.
Mhm.
I think maybe the first two episodes, just watching those, left me a little confused. Who is the season actually about? You might think it's about all four
Yeah.
characters, and in a way, they each get some screen time. But I was sort of expecting a character arc for Boimler, and I couldn't figure out. Like, he really is he can be such a irritating character at times. I thought, well, surely they have to make him
Yeah.
better. Once you give up on that hope and you focus on Mariner as the main character, and she really is. She's like got the one common thread that really flows through all the episodes, and it kind of builds up to the reveal of the secret at the last episode. But if you think about Mariner as the main character, it's a much more enjoyable show because then Boimler's just like the annoying best friend, kiss up, however you want to
Yeah.
say it, brown
Yeah.
noser. Rutherford's the way too happy engineer. So, and Tendi and Rutherford are kind of paired together as best friends. So, from Mariner,
Yeah.
she's probably the most interesting of all four of them, and it makes it more enjoyable if you watch her.
I completely agree. I didn't get to do a rewatch. I was just too busy, but I did watch. I still watched it after you because I think when we did the podcast about the first two episodes, I only just watched like the first four or something like that, and I finished it much later. I didn't have much time, but I remember that like toward the end of the season, the more they focused about Mariner, the better the show got because
Exactly.
like I said, Boimler is kind of an annoying character. Like making an entire show around him would be such a mistake. It's just not interesting. He doesn't seem to grow or change. It's really annoying. Like why would anyone want to show about him? like yeah, Mariner is a star. She's really a star. I actually kind of like Tendi. I like Tendi because I find her fascinating by what we don't know about her. Because her
Exactly.
character it raises so many questions, especially in one episode that, well, maybe I'll get to it later. But it makes me ask a lot of questions that kind of make her character interesting to me.
100% agree. Like I said, once you shift away from thinking of Boimler as the lead of the show and you focus on Mariner's character arc, and it probably even just her relationship with the captain of the ship, who is her mother, it's a much more interesting show. And I absolutely 100% agree with you. The show gets better as it goes into the later episodes. And probably is because it focuses more on Mariner and what her grief is with being,
Yeah,
with being an officer of Starfleet, a respected officer of Starfleet. So
yeah,
it starts out with a mystery. You kind of just go, oh, this Mariner character, like, what is her deal? Why is she like that? And then you kind of get some resolution, but they also leave it open enough that you could probably watch another season if it focuses on
yeah,
her.
exactly. Yeah, like she's interesting because on one hand she wants to be Starfleet. It's not like, I mean, if she didn't want to, she could have just gone home. She just have to be in Starfleet. But she also doesn't want to be anything but like the lowest ranking officer in the world shipping fleet. Like that's her goal, to be in Starfleet, but in like with the least amount of responsibility ever.
Right. And the ironic thing is, the more you watch this show, the more you learn that she was the one everybody thought was the most gifted, would become the first captain of her class. Like, she has the most potential, most talent. And here she is languishing away in the lower decks, but having a blast being the rule breaker and making sure she does her best not to get promoted.
Yeah, I mean, and as we learn later on, it's not that she wasn't high ranking before. I mean, it did say she was, like, she served on the Enterprise, like the flagship of the fleet, and she knows all of these high ranking officers and very important people in Starfleet, but she kind of like stepped down and decided that she wants to become, like I said, the person with the least amount of responsibilities in Starfleet.
Occasionally, she makes this comment that, why do you do these things for Starfleet? Starfleet doesn't look after you. I find that very curious because it's as if she thinks that if you follow all the rules, Starfleet will still throw you under the bus anyway. Makes you wonder what she's seen.
Yeah. Exactly. We still don't know much about her, about why she decided to like make this drastic change. Like she just seems to have a lot of problems with Starfleet. And at first I felt like the show was taking her side, kind of like it kind of showed she was right. That Starfleet was this really cold and ungrateful, I guess, system. That there was people just under the bus. But also in other episodes, it didn't do that. Like especially the second episode, I think it was the second episode or the third one of the first episodes. I think we talked about it too. Rutherford goes through all of these divisions because he wants to try different professions for various reasons, and he's treated badly. Like everywhere he goes, it's like he's great at it and he has friends, and everybody likes him. But he just does whatever he likes.
Yeah.
And I think it shows that like Starfleet is kind of this nice place that we were shown in most of the Star Trek shows. But it does also have kind of. I mean, we also saw in other shows that it has kind of those darker sides you don't get to see much of.
Yeah. And I think the other thing about Mariner is, while it seems like she challenges some of what, Starfleet is, like you said, she wants to be in Starfleet. If she even thinks about someone like kicking her out of Starfleet, she doesn't really want that. And I think you become, the more you watch, the more you realize a lot of her, I will say, contention is with her mother specifically, who she feels like has somehow put so much pressure on her and been, quote, the overbearing mother. That type of relationship they have has affected some of, has made her feel a lot of the way that she feels. And so there has to be some like mother daughter resolution there in order for, I think, Mariner to separate out the way she feels about being in Starfleet and being an officer in Starfleet versus the expectations that everybody had for her. And, the kind of, I'd say, pressure she probably felt she was under. So it's very complex.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, her relationship with her mother is very central to a lot of episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I am wondering how it affected her when she wasn't in the same ship as her mother, because
Yeah.
Splinter was in a different ship, like it was on black ship. So I'm still wondering what happened there, and maybe we'll find out in second or maybe in the third season. But yeah, her backstory is very interesting. She's very competent. She's like hyper competent. She seems to know pretty much everything and everyone. Um, and yeah, it's just really interesting about what happened there.
Yeah.
And you know what else is interesting?
What?
I'm kind of wondering why she insisted on befriending Boimler specifically.
I know. I was actually just going to say, if you compare Mariner and Boimler, they're complete foils for each other. It's just so odd that they consider themselves like best friends. I don't understand it.
Yeah, if it was up to Boimler, I think he would never have even spoken to her. She just kind of latched onto him. I guess because he's fun to annoy. I'm guessing, but I'm still wondering why she insisted on being like this mentor for him. Because what about him screams that he needs a mentor? Like,
Yeah, apparently he has the most perfect record of of the ensigns on the ship. So when it comes promotion time, his record looks really good. His problem is he is 100% stickler for the rules. He loves always having jobs to do. He doesn't understand what buffer time is. He wants to, say all the right things to the captain, and kind of
yeah,
basically, brown nose a little bit. He wants to be on the bridge. He wants to work in the conference room to hear what they're doing. He's so obsessed with getting promoted. it it's just
yeah,
ironic. It's just so weird that Mariner's the one who's, quote, his mentor, when all she really wants to mentor him to do is break the rules and stop being
live,
such a,
live a little.
yeah, live a little and enjoy his time in lower decks.
Yeah, he's just very. He's like one of those people who probably like thought Starfleet was gonna be the way, which is the way it is described in books and kind of in the rule books. I mean, and kind of he's kind of in the shock when he faces reality, because nothing can be 100% according to the rules at all times.
Yeah.
And people in Starfleet are still people. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to have human faults. And he was prepared completely for it to be the way he imagined it, and it's nothing like he imagined it.
In a way, I think Boimler's the least adaptable of all of them because he seems to end
Exactly.
up making the most mistakes, because he is so narrow sighted about the way to operate. And honestly, he doesn't think about like what he's doing, and sometimes, and it really comes back to bite him in the butt. A lot. Makes him
Yeah.
look foolish, actually. Makes him look like he's incompetent when he's actually not.
I don't think it's that he's not thinking. I think it's just that he really thinks things should be done one way, and he isn't ready to face the reality that it isn't. It can you can't plan things all the time, every time. Like things are never going to be exactly like you think they are,
Right.
and he has a really hard time accepting it.
And the other thing I don't understand is why he's so obsessed with the highest ranking members of the ship when he's an ensign and he's in the lower decks. Like, I would think there's some middle management that he should be trying to schmooze with, not the captain of the ship who's like, "Who are you? I don't even know your name."
Yeah. Yeah, he really just. I mean, I get why he's obsessed with them. He's probably he wants to be one of them one day. So I get it, but at the same time, yeah, enjoy your time. Like take your time, enjoy your time in the lower deck. Make friends your own rank. You know,
Yeah.
you're probably going to like advance together. So you should focus on who you're around right now rather than constantly kissing up to the higher ranks.
Exactly. How about we just talk really quick about Rutherford and Tendi, who are the
Yeah.
other best friend pair on the, I'd say, in this show. I'll start with Rutherford because he is, well, they describe him as half man, half cyborg, but the truth is he just has implants. I mean, they do give him some special abilities. He can change his mode. He doesn't have to be normal mode all the time.
Yeah.
He has perfect memory. I'm sure it gives him a lot of advantages, but Rutherford, he's a very happy go lucky type of guy. Like, not a lot seems to bother him as long as he's doing what he loves to do. He is your classic, and oddly, he's an engineer, but he's your classic. If I'm here working on the ship, deep into my science and my engineering and whatever it is I'm working on at the moment, I'm happy. And he has no contention with where he is, what he's doing. It's
Exactly.
and it's so funny that to me that he's in engineering, and it's like all the engineers seem to be obsessed with the ship, with their jobs and making the ship run and improving the ship. It's I've never seen an engineer who's like, God, I hate this job.
Well, I think if someone hates being in engineering, they just move on from engineering. But
Right.
um, but like I think he's like supposed to be kind of ironic because he's half cyborg, and there's this stereotype of like robotic characters that are like cold and emotionless, and he's like, no, he's like this happy guy who's just nice and happy all the time.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, he really really loves the job. It's kind of what what Boimler should aspire to be in a way. Like just
Mm-hmm.
find something you like and be good at it and enjoy it, and that's how you get ahead. Not by kissing ass and being being annoying.
And so Rutherford, he's that person. He's enjoying it in the moment. Tendi is the same way. To me, it seems natural that they would be best friends because they're so alike.
She is, but I think she's a little more developed character-wise than
Yeah.
Rutherford.
Yeah.
We do see all kinds of sides of her, not just the happy-go-lucky side. She's in medics. She's a medic, and she is. She has darker sides. We kind of see some of her darker sides, right? Like, she can get obsessed very easily.
Yes.
She can get very mean if you unravel her, like push her buttons.
Yeah. She's obsessed with being liked by everyone.
Exactly. There's an episode dedicated to it, and I love that episode.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but is it true that she's like the first Orion in Starfleet?
I have no idea, and that's part of her story that fascinates me because she is in Orion and she is in Starfleet. And we kind of get like a line drop about how something happened 5 years ago that made most Orion stop being pirates.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of wondering what goes there. What's her story? What happened to the Orions? Why did this happen? Um,
Uh,
because up until now, every Orion we've seen was either a pirate or a slave.
right. Or in the slave trade.
Yeah,
You have that you have that movie episode where they really raise the
yeah,
probably the stereotype that Tendi has to operate under, given that she is Orion, because you have Mariner saying, oh, here she is, she's a pirate and a slave, and Tendi keeps trying to interrupt her and saying, I'm not comfortable with that,
yeah,
I'm not with that, putting that label on me, like we're not all bad. Look at me, I'm here in Starfleet. So I can kind of see why she's obsessed with getting people to like her, why she comes in and is curious about everything, but also like trying her best to fit in,
yeah.
because if she is the first Orion in Starfleet, that's major.
That's true. I'm also kind of wondering, in Enterprise, Star Trek Enterprise, in the Orion episode, it had a lot of problems, but it also kind of claimed that Orion women have special pheromone power that makes basically hypnotizes men
Yeah.
or something like that. And I'm wondering if the show is going to take it as canon because Star Trek it can kind of ignore parts of its history when it doesn't want to play with them. But that's kind of the part of where I'm like, is her being obsessed with people liking her part of it, and is that going to play any part in her story ever? Like, are we ever going to hear about it again in general? And if so, Tandy, what does it mean about Tandy?
Right.
Um, so yeah, she's a fascinating character, like I said, because of what we don't know about her.
Mm-hmm. I will say the other thing is, given I guess what they're trying to say are the usual jobs for Orions,
Mm-hmm.
and at least based on their history, um, she's very scientific and
Yeah,
very into, like, her being in Starfleet doesn't seem like such a stretch because she is she has the education to be there, it seems like, and she has the passion for it.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of like we never did see like Orions who aren't pirates, but I imagine there are. Like, can you have a society of only pirates and slaves? Just
Yeah,
like
true.
um, maybe there is. Like maybe on the Orion home planet there is like a very normal society, but maybe it's very poor, which is why a lot of people go into piracy or things like that. Who knows?
And in one of the episodes where she gets mistaken for a covert operations officer, um, she shows that she actually has some other skills, some fighting
Yeah,
skills, right?
yeah,
So there's definitely some things about her that people just probably do not know.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of because of the show. The show is kind of comedic, so it's kind of hard to know when an episode does something because it's funny, and when it does something because it's actually important to the lore. And then it's like, is she so good at like martial arts and stuff because it was funny for the episode, or is this actually an important part of her backstory?
Exactly. You just don't know. there's
Yeah,
there's so much commentary and meta in each episode that it's kind of hard to pick, like you said, pick through it and go, are we advancing the story? Are we introducing another mystery? Like, or commenting on the canon? Or, like, it's just so much to pick through. It's funny. That's what makes
exactly.
it funny. I mean, truly, it is a comedy. It's
Yeah.
more of a comedy than any other Star Trek show, including the animated series.
Well, I mean, even the animated series from the 70s wasn't meant to be a comedy. It just
Right.
looks like it because it's so old and it's meant for kids.
Right. We laugh at it
But
now for different reasons, but the level of humor is sky high in lower decks for a reason,
yeah,
because they're making fun of a lot of things. I mean, you're on a ship that's not the Enterprise, that's not one of the higher class ships, right?
it's not an important ship. That's the thing. I
Right.
mean, the Voyager wasn't important either, but then it became important. But the Cerritos is just not important at all. Like
It's
it has zero importance in the grand scheme of
it's the second contact ship or the ship that bears gifts.
things. Yeah,
So, on a non-important ship, really, if you're in the lower decks, it's almost like you're the most least important. You never know anything about anything.
yeah. That's what I said. That's why I called like the ensigns on Cerritos like the people with the least amount of responsibility in
Hmm.
all of Starfleet.
So why don't we talk for a moment about Captain Freeman then, of this
Yeah.
vessel that is not prestigious?
Captain Freeman, who is also Mariner's mother. She's not a bad captain, She's not like a terrible captain, but she's doing the best she can, I'm sure.
I mean, she's the one who gets stuck with, arguing with races that like trying to mediate the situations that are just stupid. Um,
Yeah,
she has to go take the gifts to the people, and then even her crew screws it up. Like,
yeah,
I mean, I will say it's not like she's working with an incompetent crew, but they're not the most competent crew.
yeah. It's not like I think it's like we call it the worst ship in Starfleet. I mean, even the show is kind of like this is the worst ship in Starfleet, but
Yeah.
like they're not they're not like exactly aware that they're the worst ship in Starfleet. Like once in a while, it gets clear because like a job they're given a really bad job or a crappy job, and they're like, why are we given all of those stupid jobs? It's like then she kind of gets mad that she realizes her ship seems to be the worst ship in Starfleet, basically.
You see at the end when the ship has to be rebuilt, she wouldn't change a thing. She's
Yeah,
she's very proprietary, like over her ship. Even if it is the worst ship, it's still her ship. So she has that
yeah.
that thing that captains have, where they're just like
I think it's just a captain's pride.
a captain's pride.
Their,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like their ship, their crew. They train, they oversee them. It's like their little responsibility. So it's like it's mine. I want it. um,
I was rewatching and looking at Mariner and her mother whenever they would like be butting heads or fighting about something or in a dangerous situation together. I kind of looked at Captain Freeman and I went, this could be Mariner in like 30 years or something. They're actually very similar. I mean, of course they probably would be, being mother and daughter, but I feel like Captain Freeman was probably more like her daughter when she was younger, and she's probably cooled off over the years. But she still loves a good dangerous situation.
now that you're saying that, I'm kind of thinking, what if Mariner had her whole what crisis? I'll call it crisis because she was this, big promising, officer in a good place, and suddenly she's like the ensign of the worst ship in Starfleet. Um, what if it happened because she was afraid of ending up like her mother?
It's very possible.
Yeah, even if her mother wasn't around, maybe someone was like, "Oh, you're so good, you're going to be a captain just like your mother," and she was like, "Oh no, I must do everything to assure this won't happen."
She would definitely say that now.
Yeah,
To her, that would be the worst thing. She absolutely refuses to be like her mother, but they respond to a lot of situations the same way. Like
that's true.
they're very strong women, very like can be very focused on the job. They can handle
Yeah.
really tough situations. Um, Whereas, Captain Freeman might be more of used to going by the rule book, and she might not be as comfortable looking for the solution that the wild, crazy idea that her daughter would come up with. She's not opposed to it if push comes to shove, right? Like she does turn to her daughter and say, "I need you to give me a wild, crazy idea that breaks every rule of the book."
Yeah.
So you're right. I mean, that's very possible. Mariner just went, "I'm not going to be my mom. No way. I'm going to be
Yeah.
a crazy rule breaker."
Yeah, because her mother, while they are very similar, her mother is kind of, into being a proper Starfleet captain and kissing ass of, those important other captains and admirals. She isn't the crazy rule breaker that Mariner is. So maybe
Right.
Mariner was like, oh no, I'm turning into my mother, and then did the opposite of what her mother would do.
And they both could be so petty, though. Remember when Mariner basically made her mother look bad in front of, I guess, the admiral, whoever it was.
Wasn't it specifically so she would be get like lowered again, like depromoted or whatever? Because
Yeah, it was something like that. And then Ransom, which we'll talk about him in a minute, but Ransom is like, well, why don't you just give her the worst jobs on the ship so she'll want to transfer someone else if you want her off that bad? And so Captain Freeman decides to be so petty. She like makes her like scrape the
yeah,
carbon off the carbon off the carbon or something, and do the turbo lift lube or something. It's and then so really, they're both very petty, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
yes, they are. They are. Like I said, they are very similar in terms of personality, but yeah, but her mother is kind of like enjoying being in Starfleet. She likes her job. She likes the system. Well, Mariner is kind of against all of it. She's just kind of like, I don't know if I would call it an anarchist,
Yeah.
but she's kind of a rebel.
She is
She
a
likes to
rebel is a
rebel.
good word.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not the first time we've seen a captain and like child or like parent and child relationship where the parent's the captain in a Star Trek show.
Oh
Um,
yeah, but the last time we saw it was in Deep Space Nine, but
yeah.
their relationship is very different from Cisco and Benjamin and Jake. Yeah.
Yeah, which is what I find funny because that's the thing about Lower Decks. It takes the thing you've seen before and flips it on its head and makes it ridiculous.
That's true. That's very true.
So, with that in mind, let's talk about Ransom. Speaking of
Yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah. He's supposed to be a joke about Riker, right? Like
Yeah.
he's very obviously like what if Riker, but realistic and stupid. But he's not stupid. He's not completely stupid. He's kind of he can be competent sometimes.
Um, the one thing he's good at is fighting. And I
Yeah.
just laughed every time he's like ripping his shirt off or, to go do the fight. And he wants to do, everybody else is like got a weapon. And he's like, yes, he's like double fist punch, side roll. And I'm like, is it Kirk? Kirk fighting all over again. Like he fights that style, which I find is so hilarious because he's I was like, that's a joke about Kirk right there.
Yeah, well, I always felt like Riker himself was supposed to kind of be, a sort of Kirk type person, like to contrast Picard's style of captainship. But yeah, I mean, he's kind of a combination of very much a joke about Riker and very much a joke about Kirk, being like this handsome womanizer who
Yes.
like finds someone in every planet, and yeah, he's basically that character.
And then to have surprise appearance by like Deanna Troi and Riker. But Deanna Troi looks at him and she goes, "So, I see that you're flirting as a cover up for your lack of self confidence."
Yeah.
I was just like, yeah, that's it in a nutshell. And he's like,
And
"Oh,
you
I
know
could
what?
work with that. Do you want to? It's like, do you have somebody you want to set me up on a date with?" He's
Yeah.
just so stupid.
It's kind of interesting now that we're talking about Ransom is that, first of all, let me say I'm very glad that there is like zero hinting of any romantic interest between Boimler and Mariner, but there is some between Mariner and Ransom.
I think it's like an animal attraction, and it's very
Yeah,
brief, and they don't do anything about it. In fact, they're kind of like, "Oh no, that'd be crazy," and it's very awkward.
yeah, yeah,
And I think it's because they're supposed to hate each other. They're supposed to like, he definitely is like, "Oh, you're that crazy rule breaker we can't do anything with. Just keep throwing you in the brig and it doesn't work." And she's like, he's that suck up first officer."
yeah.
And he's so stupid.
But I did feel like in some episodes it was hinted that there might be a future for them. Um, I guess it's kind of like opposites attract in a way.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I must say again, I'm very happy that there is zero hints like that between Boimler and Mariner.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, it's not
Yeah,
like, and the weird thing is, um, and this is something else I wanted to talk about with sort of the format of the episodes, because the episodes tend to have two storylines. The four characters, Rutherford, Tendi, Boimler, and Mariner, usually get split up
yeah,
somehow, and there's two concurrent storylines going on. One of those episodes is Boimler is going to meet his girlfriend.
yeah,
Cerritos gets called in to help with destroying a moon, one of many moons for a planet, so that it doesn't like crash into the planet and kill a bunch of people. And his girlfriend is on the other ship, and then of course Mariner doesn't believe he actually has a girlfriend. Like, no, this dweeb would never actually get a girlfriend on his own.
yeah.
And then she meets her and thinks she's like a
Too good to be true.
parasite. she's
Yeah,
not. She's yeah. She's out to body snatch him or something, eat him. Who knows?
yeah.
That was the most random thing to me. Was like, wow, Boimler has a love life.
I know. I kind of agreed with Mariner, like why, and how, and like his girlfriend was so like hyper competent and very smart and very pretty and very funny, and she was like, how are you with him?
Oh, that's when we learned his name is Bradward,
Yeah,
which is a horrible name. But she's like, "I love my Bradward." I'm like, she's like, "There's nobody like him." I'm like, that's the truth.
yeah. And again in this episode, I was so happy that like yeah, Mariner was on constantly like she can't be. She's a parasite. She has parasites in her. She's a crazy rogue. What was it, a holographic whatever. Like she came up with all these theories, and it was like it wasn't because she was jealous. I think it was because it didn't make sense.
It didn't make sense, and she had been in a situation on one of her past ship
Yeah,
assignments, where her like best friend at the time got eaten
yeah,
by a boyfriend that was not really, that was actually something else. Yeah, she's like, this is something Mariner keeps mentioning, right? The crazy things she has seen on the other ships.
yeah.
The crazy, dangerous, wild, situations, circumstances that she's been put into. In a way, she's like, has made me this paranoid.
Yeah, I mean, from the first episode, we kind of see that to be in Starfleet, even as an ensign, you kind of have to get used to weird shit happening all the time, everywhere. But yeah, I think there is another episode, um, the one where she meets her friend from like the academy, who is kind of disappointed to see what become of her.
And who's her friend who actually is a captain.
Yeah. Apparently, the show's head writer or producer, I forgot, he confirmed that she wasn't just her friend, she was her ex.
Okay, I didn't know that, but cool.
So that's interesting. So I am kind of wondering. He did say they're going to like be more open about that sort of thing next season.
The fact that
So
she's bisexual.
I guess. So yeah. So and considering that's what I'm just very glad that there's nothing going on between her and Boimler. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, I'm guessing. I guess I'm wondering how this will factor into her whole, kind of rule breaker, rebel kind of thing. Because she did seem to have a lot of potential, and she kind of seems sad about disappointing her friend. What was her name?
I don't even remember her name either. But then you find out that she was doing it on purpose. She was purposely trying to be as incompetent as she could because she didn't want to be offered the first officer position.
Yeah.
On her friendship. So she was purposely sabotaging her chances.
True.
That actually, knowing that was maybe her ex adds a whole nother layer to why she might not want to have been on that ship.
Yeah, but I don't think they were on the same ship. I think they were like from the academy.
Right, but I meant why she wouldn't have wanted to accept a position with her friend who was now a captain.
Yeah. Maybe. They seem to have like a pretty good relationship, even though they're probably not together anymore.
Yeah.
She just kind of soured because she kind of saw how. Well, but she was. Mariner seemed to be pretending to be incompetent, so she wouldn't be there.
Right. Yeah.
But I think he was just doing what she always does, which is avoid getting promoted.
It's exactly it. She knew her friend was going to offer her a position on her ship, and she purposely was trying to be incompetent. Her friend figures that out because she's like, "There's no way you've gotten this stupid since the academy," and then really that's actually like the start of sort of the last few episodes where Mariner is. Where there's this trying to figure out why is Mariner feel so strongly about being in the lower decks.
Yeah. I guess the more we talk about it, the more I see it as like I think there seems to be a lot of reason. Like you said, she does seem to have some trauma for her time in Starfleet. Like a lot of things she says she experienced sound very, very awful.
Yeah.
And as we saw in other shows, Starfleet's handling of its officers' mental health is not the best. Like I think the only show where it was like addressed kind of in show is like the Next Generation, where they had Deanna Troi as a counselor on ship. But even then, Deanna wasn't a very good counselor.
No.
and we only saw her ever talk to people like Barclay. We don't really see. Like I'm thinking about Deep Space Nine, where it's like almost everybody on the station is traumatized in one way or another, but there seems to be no counselor whatsoever.
Yeah, they just got to deal with it in their own terrible ways.
Yeah.
Coping mechanisms, their own terrible coping mechanisms.
Yeah, and then in the last season they get Ezra, which is like she just became like joined with well, it doesn't matter, it's another show, but she's not fit to handle everybody's mental problems in this place.
I mean, and they even kind of make fun of that because at that point at which basically, the movie episode Captain Freeman has told her daughter, has forced her daughter to go to therapy because of the way she's acting, and she's like, I don't want to see that counselor. All he does is make fruit euphemisms, and you see really just how kind of incompetent the counselor is for the ship.
Exactly.
So, yeah, the only way Mariner gets therapy is to use the holodeck to create a movie where she's the villain and can try and kill her mom.
Actually, I think it's my favorite episode of the season.
It is mine
really.
too. It is mine too. So maybe we'll talk about it a little more in depth in a minute.
Yeah, but it does seem to be a very strong line of like she experienced a lot of bad things, and and counselors in Starfleet seem to be incredibly incompetent. So it could be a combination of she doesn't want to end up like her mother, and she's been traumatized, and she doesn't want any help, but that's how she ended up where she ended up.
In case our listeners haven't figured it out, the arc that is buried in season 1 is Mariner.
Yeah.
It's all about why is Mariner, who has so much potential, everybody thought she's top of her class, everybody thought she'd be the first captain. Why is she in the lower decks? Why is she determined to want to stay in the lower decks? And then it just shows how fraught that makes her relationship with her mother, who's actually also her captain. And yeah, it kind of culminates into like the last 2 episodes. The second to last episode, Crisis Point, is the one where she has to do the therapy and creates her own version of therapy. And then, of course, the last episode of the season's where they face that some return villain who wants to like pull their ship apart and take pieces of their ship. And I didn't recognize the villain. It must be from another show, but they have already destroyed like.
Oh, the Packleheads? Yeah, they're like a minor villain in the Next Generation.
Yeah.
But the Next Generation they're more like stupid. Like
they're still stupid.
Yeah, they're still stupid, but it's like
they think they're attacking the Enterprise. And she's like, no, none of us are the Enterprise. And they're like, we don't care. We're gonna defeat you, Enterprise. They're so stupid. But anyway, they end up in a situation where the ship is literally being ripped apart. So it's Mariner has to come off of it to, kind of work with everybody else to save the ship. So.
And then it turns out, yeah, she's like everybody finds out she's the captain's daughter.
Right. That's how the episode starts because Boimler is an idiot. Who just, at the worst possible time tells Mariner that he's found out the secret that she is the captain's daughter.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it gets announced to the whole crew, so.
Speaking of how badly Starfleet handles mental health, apparently they also don't handle physical health that well.
Ooh, yeah.
Because I'm talking about the episode about the farm.
That is just so funny, though. Something I do like about the show is how they definitely lead you with one expectation, and then at the last minute, it's something completely different. So the farm is a great example. Boimler basically gets put into interphase, so now he's basically a science project for somebody. And it shows that, when something does happen to you on your dangerous, crazy missions out in space, like if you get turned into half a young person, half an old person, you're considered, you get shipped off to, quote, the farm.
Yeah.
And so all the rejects, all the poor lieutenants in Starfleet who encountered something dangerous and then basically can no longer serve their post get sent to the farm.
Yeah. And they are kind of sent on this huge ship looks so intimidating, and on the inside it looks so cold and dark and old, and it looks really weird, for a Starfleet ship. And you kind of can't blame all the other people there for saying, oh, there is no farm, we're trapped here forever. And you kind of believe that because the ship looks terrible. Like, why would you still use that ship?
a lot of us are kind of did get the sense like, what does happen to the people who have the accidents?
Yeah. Who aren't fixed by the end of the episode. Yeah.
Yeah, but at the end of the episode, it turns out they were just on a really long journey. Just takes a long
Yeah.
time to get to the farm, but the farm is actually like a spa for freaks, as
Yeah.
they put it. And they use that term a lot, freaks,
Yeah.
to describe the officers who had been through something physically and probably, mentally traumatic.
Yeah. So imagine if you take it into a realistic turn, like imagine you're a person who gets through an accident and is now one of those freaks, and you're now in this state where you don't know if you'll ever be back to yourself, and you're very scared, and suddenly you're put on this very creepy old ship and told you're going to a mysterious place called the farm. And it's like that's a very bad way of handling all of it.
Where, they may or may not have a hope of curing you.
Yeah.
To me, it's like social commentary on today, how we just, those with disabilities and those who are unfortunate, less fortunate than others, sometimes in society are shuffled away to the side where nobody has to, nobody really tries to pay attention to them. So
Exactly.
it just gives you that same feeling, right? Can we just talk about the really funny part of the episode where Tendi's created the dog? Because the dog turns out I can't. Tendi says she does something. She creates it. Let's just say she does
Yeah.
some genetic engineering and creates this dog, which she's never seen a dog before.
Yeah.
They apparently don't have them on Orion.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, so she basically creates this quote freak that has to get sent to the
It's like
farm also.
it looks like she saw a picture of a dog and she was like, "Yes, I'll create that," but she doesn't know what it can and can't do. So it basically can do all of the weirdest things ever. Like it can, I don't know, it can transform and it can talk and it can, I don't know,
Fly.
grow, fly. Everything. Basically, it can do. It can do everything. But
But
yeah,
the funny part is at the very beginning, like every time she turns her back, it does something really, really weird, but also creepy as heck. So like walks on the ceiling like a spider, flips its head back and bats come out of it. Like
yeah,
it's basically all the like the monster movie, horror movie stuff that the
yeah.
dog does when nobody's looking.
And you see it and you're like thinking, oh, she made a mistake, something went terribly wrong, but it's like, no, she totally meant for it to happen. She just doesn't know what the dog does.
Right. I think the least weird thing about the dog is that it talks.
That's true. That's probably true.
But it's things like that, right? So where the episodes get split up into different storylines, it's you got Boimler
Yeah.
and Tendi and the dog heading to the farm, while you have basically like Mariner off with her best friend from the academy, trying her best not to get promoted.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that tends to be. I hope they keep that format because it at least gives something to all the characters. It gives them something to do.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Another character we can talk about this season, which is kind of popular, I guess, because I've seen them talked about, is Badgey.
Oh God, Badgey. So you know how Tendi creates the dog? Well, Rutherford creates a holodeck program. It's supposed to be a training program, and the host of the program is Badgey. It is a Starfleet badge with eyes and
Yeah,
legs and arms and a mouth that talks.
yeah.
It's supposed to be your training instructor? Yeah, not so much.
And of course, the program, the holodeck goes bad because it always does, and something goes on, and Badgie turns into this murderous, evil creature that looks all happy and stuff, but then tries to kill Rutherford.
But the interesting thing is, Badgey. It appears that Badgey has been sentient, like self-aware for some time. Not only before the holodeck program got screwed up because of the electricity or whatever. Badgey remembers and is able to process, like, emotionally how Rutherford might have treated him when he glitched, like kicking him. And Badgey calls him father. And Badgey has a very murderous grudge against his creator.
Yeah.
So just the whole self-awareness of Badgey was, well, it's very in keeping with, what happens sometimes in Starfleet, I guess, like in other Starfleet shows, right?
Yeah, I guess it takes like the whole question of like, are holodeck create like, are holodeck characters aware or not? Are they sentient? Because they're supposed to act like they're sentient, That's
Yes.
part of the fun of the hologram program, of the holodeck program. Um, but like, if they are, it's like you're creating a sentient person that you can basically control however you want, make them act, stop them, erase them, make them do whatever you want, basically.
Mistreat them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's like, I guess that's why Badgey is resentful, because he was created and manipulated, and yeah, I guess I can understand why he's angry.
Well, I mean, he's not just angry, he's psychotic. I think that
Yeah,
was probably the most violent, like, episode of the whole series. Because he's literally, like, the things he says, and he's like ripping people in half to get to Rutherford and Tendi. It's wow, it was pretty bloody.
yeah, that's true.
And then, of course, we have a reprise of Badgey in the last episode. Badgey is the one, of course, who can create the virus to take down those enemy ships that are pulling the Cerritos apart. And of course, Badgey wants his revenge. So
Yeah,
it's not like he's just gonna offer up a virus for Rutherford to plant on the ship. No, he's gonna make the ship self-destruct, so it'll destroy his creator. It'll
of course.
destroy Rutherford.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So it's a shame because I was kind of hoping Badgey would come back occasionally.
I mean, maybe he will. That's the fun of him being a
Maybe there's a
hologram.
backup version.
Yeah, exactly. He's a holodeck character. He's not a person. But he does end up taking someone with him, which is the sad part.
Shaxs.
Shaxs, yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of like Shaxs. I'm kind of sad for that. I don't know.
Can we
It was, it was fun.
just? I couldn't. Okay, so I caught on to this too late. He is supposed to be Bajoran.
Yeah.
I couldn't decide if he was so violent minded, like, haha, I want to fight. I want to go, like, he's like, I want to destroy this ship. I want to kill these people. He's just like so happy to be in the middle of, like, war and fighting people. Like, is that a Bajoran thing, or is that like commentary on the security officer?
I think it was commentary on the security officer. He acts very much like Worf did in The Next Generation. Like, every time there was an enemy, we should shoot, we should kill, we should do.
Yeah, he was just
Um,
so intense with his reactions.
yeah. Yeah, I think it was a commentary about the security thing. It was pretty funny. But he was a nice guy.
So I figured, I was like, it must be commentary on Worf because the other security officers on the weren't as intense.
Yeah.
No one was like Worf, but Worf was a Klingon. You know who we haven't talked about? Well, there's two other characters that are part of the main bridge crew, I guess you could say, like the engineer, chief engineer, which just seems to be sad and lonely all the time, even though he's
That's
really good
true.
at his job.
Oh, but Rutherford loves him.
Rutherford loves him, but he refuses to go, like, talk to him and be friendly with him. He's like, no, he's way so high above me. He's just so perfect. I can't have a conversation with him. And you see the poor guy sitting there just looking at his soup so sadly. Like, go talk to the
Yeah.
guy.
He seems like he could use a friend, yeah.
the engineer, that's the thing. Like, the chief engineer is as nice as Rutherford is nice.
Exactly. I think he's just this average guy. He's supposed to be like he's not this like I don't know like this fiery. He doesn't have this big personality like everybody else does.
Right.
He's just this like average guy, just kind of in the background, which I think is kind of true to most engineer characters in Star Trek. Like whether it was Miles or Geordi or Brian, they're all kind of these like regular nice guys. Like there was nothing very unique about their characters. I think Bilana is the only one that stands out
Right.
among them.
I mean, that just goes in with the theme of the show. Like, whatever the character archetype is, they dial it up. So,
Yeah.
if you've got your background like chief engineer that's never really in the limelight, like you said, nice guy, not a lot is not in the spotlight a lot, then you're gonna make it he's like even less present.
Like something that he's not in the spotlight. It's just that he doesn't have this big personality.
Right,
He's just
right.
a nice average guy, which is what he usually is.
Yeah. But what I mean is he's even more of a side character than he was a side character in other shows.
Yeah, I mean he's more of a nobody kind of.
Yeah.
Well, not really. He's competent, I'm sure, but he's like when you think about the defining characteristics of engineers, they're the everyday guys. They're like the everyday people. They're not like very loud or unique or anything.
Yeah. Which I mean it doesn't have to be that way.
So
It's just a Star Trek thing.
yeah, I mean, as I said, Vilana Torres is kind of the opposite. She's very angry and hot-headed and emotional. And she was a very prominent character, but she was like the opposite of what most of the other engineers were.
Yeah. And then the other one is the chief medical officer.
Oh yeah. Well, I forgot her name, but I love her.
Yep. I mean, if you wanted to talk about like grouchy chief medical officers, here we've got another one. She's on top of her game with her sarcasm and her snarky comments.
Man, I have to remember her name because I love her. First of all, she is Acacian, which is she's the second Acacian in a Star Trek show, and the previous show that had Acacian was also animated.
Really? I didn't realize she was Acacian. I thought she was something of like a similar species.
No, she was Acacian. It was confirmed.
Oh yeah, okay.
I thought it was
You know,
Acacian.
her
No,
name's Tiana.
Tana. Her name is Tana.
Tana or Tana or something like that.
Yeah, T and yeah, it's like a T,
Tiana.
T apostrophe Anna, Tana, however you pronounce it. I think Tiana. Okay, so yeah, Tiana, and she's this grouchy, bitter, like rough kind of CMO, which is also kind of a stereotype. Like if you think about CMOs like McCoy or the MH in the Doctor in
Yeah.
Voyager, they're basically like that.
Yeah.
I found it was interesting because the CMOs don't really have a stereotype. I think the CMO character is kind of the most diverse out of all of Starfleet, kind of stock characters.
Very true.
Yeah, you have grouchy old Dr. McCoy, but then in the next generation you have kind of younger and more like compassionate Dr. Beverly Crusher, and then in Deep Space Nine you have a very young and wide-eyed and idealistic Bashir, and then in Voyager you're back to kind of like this sarcastic and know-it-all, holographic image, and then in Enterprise you have this like nice guy. Um, well, I forgot his name, but I really like his character. In Enterprise, it was
I forgot his name too. Oops.
Phlox. Flux. I completely forgot him. Yeah, Flux.
Okay, any other characters to talk about, Soda?
None that I can think of.
So I know what your favorite episode is. It's also mine. What is your least favorite episode?
Hmm, that's a good question. I think I think the one with the buffer time. I thought it was the most boring one. I think it was because it's the most Boimler centric one.
Because it ends up with him getting a plaque called the Boimler effect, which is basically encourages the crew members to not follow the rules, build in that buffer time. So, for those of you who don't know what we mean, buffer time is when you tell your superior it takes you longer to do something than it actually does, so that when you get it done faster, you not only look good, but you actually have a little extra time to do whatever you want. It's buffer time.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, it just kind of it's okay. I don't think there is a single bad episode in the season, but it's the least interesting one. If I had to rewatch any episode, this is the one I'd likely choose the least amount. At least I'd be least likely to choose, basically.
For me, it was actually Cupid's errant arrow, which is the one with Boimler's girlfriend. One, because I don't care that he has a girlfriend. I didn't find it added anything when Mariner was trying to figure out what the girlfriend was and why she would possibly be interested in Boimler. The other storyline, which was Rutherford and Tendi just, going crazy over these diagnostic, like these new diagnostic tools. Yeah. Like, to me, it was really the least interesting because it was, again, kind of Boimler centric about his girlfriend. I mean, I was actually more interested in Captain Freeman trying to talk the inhabitants of the planet into letting them demolish the moon. And she kept getting aggravated with the one guy who said, "You're going to be murderers, because if you get rid of that moon, then it means it'll kill the moon that I live on, and everybody lives on it." And it turns out there's only 2 people on it. They're just
Okay. He said it'll kill our civilization.
Yeah.
How many people are in their civilization? 2?
2. So, yeah, to me that was the most interesting part of that episode. The rest of it, like the alien parasite that could potentially be the girlfriends, fighting over the technology, like, I didn't care so much.
Yeah, it was also kind of a map episode, but I don't know. The buffer time one just I don't know, but I feel like the combination of Boimler and the captain is just very uninteresting to me. Like with other characters, they could be fun, but under when they're together, they're just very not interesting.
Yeah. I did like the concept of, the captain learns what buffer time is, and therefore she puts everybody on the clock and gives them a set amount of time to do their assignments.
Yeah, but I'm kind of like, didn't she over? How did she not know this? She was an ensign at some point. No.
Well, that just kind of speaks to her obliviousness to those who were not on the bridge.
I guess.
But the thing is, she did it for everybody, including herself. So everybody was losing sleep. Everybody was going out of their minds trying to get their assignments done. It's not like she just did it to the lower decks. And then basically Boimler had to come talk her down and say, you still run the most efficient ship in the Starfleet, which I don't think is true, but yeah, I agree. That would probably be my second least favorite one.
Yeah. So what do you hope we'll see in the next season?
Well, I'm hoping Boimler stays gone.
Sadly, I don't think that's going to happen. I think it was kind of hinted that he'll be back next season.
So what? He's going to screw up and get his demoted from the Titan?
Probably. I wouldn't put it past him.
I really wasn't emotionally moved at all by Rutherford losing his memory. And I think they kind of made the point of it doesn't really matter because he's still the same cheerful person. It's not going to bother him that he doesn't know who anyone is.
Yeah, but I think they're also hinting at like a romance between him and Tendi, and for most of the season, he was interested and she didn't seem to be interested. Maybe next season it will be kind of the other way around.
That would be cool. I would like that. You're right, because there were points at which he kept going, Tendi's so cute. He wanted to impress her. So, yeah, I could totally see basically like Tendi and Rutherford becoming more than friends.
Yeah, and I think because of his loss of memory, it would be more like Tendi realizing she has feelings for him, and he doesn't really respond because he doesn't remember,
Yep.
their relationship so much.
I hope Mariner's the only one who doesn't change too much. I kind of like her being the rule breaker. I mean, she's just so interesting as a character. I do like to see her working through her problems
Yeah,
and the things that are holding her back from leaving lower decks and being a more responsible Starfleet officer. But at the same time, I want her to get there slowly because I'm enjoying watching her story.
yeah, I feel the same way. I do kind of want her, I want her to progress and work through her issues because she clearly has some. But yeah, I hope she stays kind of a rebel still.
Yeah. I was more entertained by just the way they kept throwing in so many references and making fun of things.
Oh yeah, there were so many references.
So many. So, like, for instance, in the episode where they're basically getting everybody to testify to the events that happened.
Yeah,
And everybody's, experienced something different.
that's probably my second favorite episode. It's really fun.
Just
So
the
funny.
whole like misconception over what is actually happening is hilarious.
That's true. It's Rutherford and Tandy were hilarious. The stories were hilarious. Like Rutherford with his like constant upgrades, and he just kind of goes to like blackouts and wakes up in weirder and weirder situations. Um,
So, and
yeah,
one of the references in that was, where they had stolen. They were dressed in Vulcan robes, and
yeah,
he's like, we got these on. We took them from Spock and Spock. And the thing is, the Vulcan robes are from the movies, aren't they? That's like the voyage home like robes that Spock was wearing.
could be.
So anyway, yeah, just little things like that are so hilarious.
There was like I think in the second episode where Mariner fell asleep and she was like reciting the speech the speech Khan gave in the Wrath of Khan for some
Yeah.
reason.
By the way, Mariner was obsessed with all the heroes from the older generation. She apparently, grew up definitely knowing Starfleet history, the great captains from
Yeah,
Starfleet, and you can tell she like respects and admired the things they went through. So that's pretty awesome.
yeah,
She references like the escapades of the original Enterprise all the time.
yeah, that's true. There's something interesting that we didn't talk about that much. Mariner's father, we have seen him once or twice. He's an admiral,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of he and her mother seem to be friendly. They don't seem to be like fighting or something. But I am kind of wondering what's the relationship between them because they don't seem to see each other very much, right?
No, they don't.
And they only talk in the context about her, like
Yeah. Like, well, she's your
yeah,
problem. We talked about this. It's your
yeah,
turn. You deal with her.
yeah. So I am wondering what's the story there too.
But as we see in the last episode, once people find out she's the captain's daughter, they not only find out she's the captain's daughter, but she's the daughter of an admiral. So she's like very elite, I guess. You know, people treat her like she's royalty. And it's very awkward. I mean, not only for her, but just in general. Why would an admiral and a captain's daughter, like, is there some type of higher class of officer within Starfleet? You know, if you're the legacy of that you get treated differently. It's a very interesting commentary.
True. That's right. I mean, we kind of see that, right? I don't think that there's like literal royalty, but I do think if you're like the child of an admiral, you kind of have expectations. If you're the child of a senior Starfleet member and you join Starfleet, people who know this, your parents kind of expect you to measure up to them.
Yeah.
We kind of see this in Voyager, with John Paris, who is the son of an admiral, and he also kind of rebels. Actually, when you think about it, he's kind of like Mariner. Like he also kind of rebels, and he's like, "Oh, I don't want. I'm so mad that I have to live up to my father's, standards and stuff."
Let's talk about our favorite episode.
Yeah.
I'll let you describe it, Soda.
Well,
to the best of your abilities. It's kind of out there.
Yeah, no, it just I don't remember what happens, but Boimler has like an interview with the captain about a promotion, I think, and he wants to rehearse or something, and so Mariner kind of says, yes, let's go to the holodeck, and instead of making a program that will help him, she creates a fun movie that he can play. And in the movie, she's like the villain who attacks the Cerritos, whose captain is her mother, and so she gets to kind of play out, kind of deal with her issues with her mother through the movie by fighting her.
Yeah. She names herself as the villain Vindicta. She's like Khan from the Wrath of Khan, right?
Well, I think she's like a typical
vengeful villain.
Movie villain. Yeah, TOS movie villain. Like she can be Khan, she can be the third Search for Spock villain. I don't remember his name. She's basically a movie villain, a Star Trek movie villain. Yeah.
And so Rutherford and Tendi join her at first. This is where, you see, Rutherford makes a very terrible villain because the only thing he's ever wanted to do was go talk to his chief of engineering and tell him how awesome he is and how much he admires him. Like, apparently that's the one thing he hasn't been able to bring himself to do in real life. And so he has an opportunity in the holodeck, because the chief of engineering wouldn't know who he is because he's supposed to be a villain. He ends up just like helping save the day from Vindicta, which is hilarious. And then, of course, Tendi ends up leaving the holodeck simulation because of the stereotyping that, like, Mariner obtusely just kind of like cast her into the role of the Orion, space pirate slash slave. And she's just not okay with that role. So, and then she's also like, "Why are you like murdering everybody?" Everybody.
Yeah, Mariner kind of manages to freak everybody out with her program.
I was kind of freaked out. I was like, "Wow, this is she really is vindictive. She is literally blowing people up. Like when she blows up Shaxs, and then she's like, "Ooh, keep his like earring as a memento." Wear it, as a trophy of the kill. We're like, what? That's when Tendi walks out. Boimler, of course, is still dead set on trying to figure out what to say to the captain when he's on bridge duty, that he ends up, being on the good side but he's not actually doing anything actively good. He's just asking people like, what's the captain's favorite cookie? He's testing out phrases to say to the captain to see what she would say. Like, he's doing what he originally intended to do with his simulation program in the middle of a revenge movie.
Yeah.
There's so many references to the movie. So it starts out with the captain and her crew are on a lake enjoying
Yeah.
themselves, and they get a call. So they've got to go up to the Cerritos, and they get on the shuttle. And then, of course, we had the long scene of them coming into the Cerritos, looking at how beautiful the Cerritos is, the engineers crying. Um, so they have the long extended scene that mimics the motion picture.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is what I didn't notice the first time. What I noticed the second time, Soda, the lens flare. They purposely
Oh,
have
yeah.
lens flare like all over the bridge.
Actually, I actually noticed it the first time around. I was like, yes, the lens flares.
So
It
I
has
love
to
it
be there too.
because they're not only referencing
The old movie.
the old movies, the original series, like Next Generation, they're referencing Abrams' verse, and it's amazing.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's hilarious. The whole episode is basically a movie. Vindicta goes after the
Yeah.
captain. The captain's like, I don't know who the hell you are. Why do you have a grudge? Why are you trying to destroy the ship and killing all my people? And they're fighting. And then guess who shows up to fight Vindicta? It's Mariner.
Yeah.
It's holodeck simulated Mariner. So she ends up having therapy one-on-one with herself because they try to kill each other, and she ends up realizing how she feels about her mom and how she feels about being in Starfleet and being an officer, and that she doesn't hate either as much as she thought. She would actually protect them if she had to.
Of course. I mean, I think the amount of issues that get revealed in this episode is a lot.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she kind of works through them, and then in the end, she's sorry for being so weird.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's also interesting because as smart as Mariner is supposed to be, to watch her fight herself is entertaining because she ends up outwitting herself as a villain. Because as a villain, she is so obsessed with this one thing, which is killing Captain Freeman. Her normal self ends up outwitting her and saving the day again.
Yeah. It was very fun to watch, and like I said, I hope we get more of Mariner working through her issues next season.
Yeah. Have you heard anything about having more like cameos like Will Riker and Deanna Troi showing up in the last episode on the Titan?
No, I don't think I heard about more cameos. Oh, speaking of cameos, we haven't talked about during the trial episode where they all remembered stuff.
Oh
We
yeah.
got a Q cameo.
Q in two different scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Um,
And they're like, "No,
It just
Q,
does-
we're done for the day. We don't have time for you." And they're like, "Go bother Picard." And there's like, "No, he's always making wine and doesn't have time for me."
yeah, he references the new Picard show. That's fun.
Yeah. There's actually are cameos. They're pretty interesting. With it being animated, they can bring back so many villains. Like, how many times have the Borg been mentioned in that season? A bunch. And there's even in the
Yeah.
in that movie episode, Crisis Point, like where she just pulls out a random Borg head, and that's what she uses to blow up Shaxs. Even in the opening of the show, right? In the opening credits, you have the Cerritos like coming upon some race fighting the Borg, and they just turn around and get the heck out of there.
Yeah. I am now thinking, because they're animated and they can bring whoever they want. I'm wondering what they'll do with this power because it really is like the sky's the limit with animation.
I think I'm correct with this, right? They're still at a point in the canon where Some of where the original crew, some of the original crew is still alive, like Spock. McCoy
Yeah.
might be alive. Scotty, I think, is alive.
I think Scotty died at the end of the Next Generation episode.
Oh, he did.
I think so. Yeah.
I can't remember the
Um,
timing of it, but so there's a little bit of the original crew. There's definitely the Next Generation, and there's some overlap with, obviously like Deep Space Nine and other shows as well.
yeah. I'm wondering if Voyager is back in the Alpha Quadrant by this point.
Yeah.
They can really have whatever cameo they want, basically.
But you never know. I don't think we've had a time travel episode yet.
Yeah, that's true. They can also have an Enterprise crossover.
Yeah. Oh, I love the reference to the animated series. So I can't remember which episode it was, but they open up where like the Cerritos has had to go deal with Beta 3, which is the planet where they had Landru. And the race of people have gone back to worshiping Landru. And, they
Yeah.
make this comment like, why don't we ever follow up with these people that we come in and, if we're going to get involved and change the shape their change their society, why don't we come back and make sure they're still doing the right thing?
Yeah.
And then Ransom, of course, is like got a little pad in his hand, and he's like, oh yeah, they haven't, he's like, oh yeah, they haven't come back here since Kirk and his crew were here. And then they show the animated Kirk and Spock.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
That's good.
like reference to the TAS is awesome. Um,
Yeah.
but just stuff like that, right? Like, oh yeah. I mean, they make good points. They make things that I think people have always asked questions about, like if Kirk, did go in and during that Prime Directive time influence the society, who goes back and sees what's going on later?
Yeah. I guess the second contact chip. That's the job for it. Yeah, but it is a good point. And like I said, also the doctor, the CMO, Tiana, she's like I said, she's a Caucasian, and the only other time we saw a Caucasian was in the original animated series. So that's also kind of and they're complete opposite. Like the Caucasian in the animated series is all like young and pretty and and kind of well kept, and Tiana looks like this frumpy old cat.
She does. She looks just like yeah, she looks like it's just the animation style is different, but right, she's not meant to look feminine at all. Like there's no
Yeah.
gender there really. Just a very unpleasant cat.
Yeah.
So the guy who was in charge of the ship for the farm, didn't we see him in the animated series, one of his species?
I don't know actually. I'm not sure they ever confirmed the species.
I thought maybe he was Merrick or whatever his name was on the animated series. Like the one who was sat at the navigation.
Eric? I think his name is
Yeah.
Eric. Yeah. Could be. I remember when Discovery came out, and a lot of people thought that like Saru would be one of Eric's, species, but that also didn't end up being true. So I'm wondering, I'm wondering if you'll ever get to see another one of Eric's species.
I just thought in general it's funny that they more than once they make the comment that like the Cerritos doesn't get to see the action that the Enterprise does,
Yeah.
or that the other ships do. It's they're just like we're no Enterprise. Like why are we even involved in this situation? We think we're going to like bail a ship out because they like broke their break it circuit or something and don't have any power. It turns out they're being attacked by aliens.
Yeah. Well, I think we kind of summed up everything there is to sum up about the first season.
I agree.
It was very fun. I really enjoyed it. I think out of the three new Trek shows that we got, this one is probably the most enjoyable, especially its first season.
I agree with you. I'm definitely looking forward to season 2.
Yeah, me too.
I don't want Boimler back, but I'm with you. I think he's going to fail his assignment and he's going to end up back on the Cerritos being
Yeah.
annoying.
Unfortunately true.
Do you think they'll like give more spotlight to Tendi or Rutherford? I feel like Tendi's next.
I don't know. I hope so, but I don't know. There is I think backstory to. I think we didn't get much backstory for any of the characters, right?
Yeah.
Um, so there is a lot to look into, but it's also it is mostly a comedic show, so
Oh,
probably not on the top of their to-do list.
oh, the one other thing I wanted to mention was sometimes we did see characters that were not very good Starfleet officers, like personality wise. Um, I think we saw in it was the last episode where this new like little AI bot had just become a Starfleet officer, the first of her race, and Tendi was her the person who was going to show her around the ship. And
Yeah,
apparently she has no hands or anything, right? Because she's just a little flying robot, like
yeah.
little mechanical being. Turns out,
Peanut,
and Peanut Hamper.
peanut hamper.
And it turns out Peanut Hamper is really good with medical stuff because she's very precise. But you see what happens. They ask her to save the day by planting the virus on the ship and the enemy ship. And she's just like, nope. She's like, I only joined Starfleet to piss my dad off. And she's like, I'm out of here. And she beams herself out of the situation. And I was like,
Exactly.
wow. So, okay. So I thought that was interesting. And then there was Ensign Fletcher, which was the
Yeah,
idiot who tried to make himself smarter by connecting his brain to
great.
like the core hatch or something. I don't even know what it was, like one of those little cores that they were trying to recalibrate or something.
Yeah,
And so of course it goes crazy, and he keeps like he blames Delta Shift. He tries to blame the enemies or like the people that they're trying to make some kind of peace treaty with.
yeah,
He blames every other person, but instead of telling the truth, which is that he did something stupid. And then he gets promoted.
yeah. But like a few minutes later, we learned that he failed so bad he got kicked out or
Yeah,
something.
he got kicked out. He got kicked back to Earth, as they said. But
Yeah,
well, he gets promoted because basically Boimler and Mariner are like tell a story that makes him look good just to get him off the ship because he's such a disaster.
yeah, yeah.
Apparently, even they have standards for who will be their friends.
Apparently. So yeah, this was the first season. Yeah, and we are looking forward to do the next one.
It's possible when the second season drops, Soda and I might review the first two episodes like we did for season one. But at some point, we will certainly watch all of season two and come back with a recap in the same way we did for season one.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so thanks everyone listening to this podcast about Lower Decks, and we will be back next time.
Yeah, goodbye.